Vagabond, folks. Today we have yet another very interesting looking integral that looks like an assortment of, well, it looks like the result of throwing various functions at the wall and seeing what converges. I mean, we have trig functions, we have a log, and even a monomial. And this integral is characterized by a couple of parameters alpha and beta, which are positive real numbers. So we have the integral from 0 to infinity of cosine alpha x minus cosine beta x over x times log x dx. And because we already have parameters in the mix, we might as well adopt a Feynman's trig approach and define an integral function I of a parameter alpha as the integral from 0 to infinity of cosine of alpha x over x times log x dx. Although I will encourage you to also try the integral function 1 minus cosine alpha x in the numerator instead, because that itself is a really cool side quest. This works too, but this works because of a neat little trick that will become evident by the end of the solution development. So we're trying to differentiate under the integral sign, but does this integral function even converge? Well, you have a cosine of alpha x term, and its antiderivative is sine of alpha x over alpha, which is a bounded function, and we have log x over x, which is a decreasing function of x on the interval from 0 to infinity. So by Dirichlet's test, this thing converges. And Dirichlet's test is something that I've actually quoted wrongly a few times, so terribly sorry about that for as many times I have made that mistake. But anyway, for now, this thing actually does converge. So what we'll do here is differentiate the integral function with respect to alpha, and yes, I know what you're thinking, or I know what you're saying, or gonna comment anyway, that we need to make sure that the differentiated integral function also converges, and we will show that by the sheer size of our balls in evaluating this thing to the end and showing, well, there you have it, it converges. So we have I prime of alpha equal to, on switching up the order of the integration and differentiation operators, we have the integral from 0 to infinity of now the partial derivative with respect to alpha of cosine alpha x over x times log x dx. Now, we're differentiating with respect to alpha, so we can hold all the x terms. Well, we are holding all the x terms constant, so we have this log x over x, and the derivative of cosine is a negative sine of alpha x, and because of the chain rule, we have this extra factor of x outside, which cancels out really nicely, resulting in the integral from 0 to infinity of, well, we have a negative sign outside, sine of alpha x times log x dx. Okay, cool. Now that looks like a really cool integral in itself, and whenever I see sines and cosines, I'm just drawn to Euler's beautiful formula. So we know that e to the I theta is equal to cosine of theta plus I times negative sine theta. And if you replace theta by the negative of theta, then you have cosine negative theta, which is just cosine theta, but sine is an odd function. So we have a negative sign outside. So this implies that negative sine theta is actually just the imaginary part of e to the negative I theta. And this further implies that our derivative of the integral function I prime of alpha is the imaginary part of the integral from 0 to infinity of e to the negative I alpha x times log x dx, and this is starting to look familiar. Whatever could it be? Oh yeah, there's a really cool integral transform that involves such an exponential term as the kernel. So recall that the Laplace transform of log t as a function of the complex variable s equals negative Euler Mascheroni constant plus log s over s. So what we have is s equal to I times alpha, and to just make that clear, recall that the Laplace transform is defined, in this case, that is, oh, terribly sorry about that, for the log function, that's the integral from 0 to infinity e to the minus st log t dt is equal to all of that jazz. So that means s is just equal to not the negative, we already have a negative sign over there, s is equal to I times alpha. So this implies that I prime of alpha is just the imaginary part, or the negative of the imaginary part of the Euler-Mascheroni constant plus the logarithm of, what exactly? Oh yeah, I times alpha over I times alpha. Of course, by logarithm, we mean the principal logarithm. So this is negative imaginary part of 1 over I is equal to negative I, and I always find that extremely cool. So I'm getting rid of the negative sign, and I have imaginary part of I times Euler-Mascheroni plus log of I times alpha. So this thing is log of I plus log alpha, and I have the I being multiplied over here all over alpha. So the result is the imaginary part of I times Euler-Mascheroni plus log alpha. Now, what on earth is the logarithm of the imaginary unit? Well, I here is, again, by Euler's formula, that's e to the I pi over 2, correct? So this implies that the principal logarithm of I is, well, exactly that. That's just I times pi over 2. Okay, cool. So we have I times pi over 2 all over alpha. And multiplying by I yields imaginary part of I times Euler-Mascheroni plus log alpha over alpha minus, because I squared is -1, pi over 2. So the imaginary part is clearly all of this junk over here. And all of this implies that I prime of alpha is simply equal to Euler-Mascheroni constant plus log alpha over alpha. That was interesting, but now of course we plan on recovering back the integral function, and for that we're going to have to integrate with respect to alpha. So I'm doing exactly that, and then we have I of alpha on the left-hand side, and on the right we have Euler-Mascheroni times d alpha over alpha. We all know how that turns out. That is the logarithm of alpha. Plus, we have log alpha over alpha. Now, 1 over alpha is the derivative of log alpha. So that means I can just apply the power rule for integration and get log square alpha over 2 plus a constant of integration that I'm going to call k. And yeah, about the side quest integral, you can actually calculate the value of the constant of integration by plugging in alpha equal to 0, because that would give you a cosine of 0, which is 1, and then you would have a 1 minus 1. And yeah, you get the idea. But here, there's no convenient value of alpha we can pick, such that we have the constant of integration. But I could just replace alpha by beta and note that I of beta is equal to gamma times log beta plus log square beta over 2 plus the exact same constant k, right? And my target integral involves cosine alpha x minus cosine beta x times log x. So in essence, the target integral that I should write somewhere over here, the target integral is just I of alpha minus I of beta. So that's just something to bear in mind for those who are going to be reading the post on this, or seeing the post on this, because it's just going to be screenshots of this solution development. Anyway, so the point is, we can just subtract the two results and get the target integral. So that's why we don't really need the value of the constant of integration. So this implies that the target integral I, which is equal to just, well, I of alpha minus I of beta, the k's cancel out, and you have gamma times log of alpha minus log of beta, plus we have a 1/2 factored out log square alpha minus log square beta, and this could be simplified quite nicely. Notice that we have gamma of log of alpha over beta, nothing wrong over there, plus 1/2, we have a difference of squares. So why not write this as log alpha minus log beta times log alpha plus log beta. Been a while since I actually did so much algebra. So we have gamma times log alpha over beta plus 1/2 of log alpha over beta times log of alpha times beta, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you. See you next time.